What's up, guys? David DeSell, your host of the Business with the Boys podcast. And Landon and I just got off a great episode, and a lot of trials and tribulations were shared on Jason Moore's journey. Jason, he's a winemaker, an entrepreneur, and visionary innovator. He's originally from Texas, and I ended up on his marketing list somehow and just loved the story that was shared in that email and reached out to him to have him on the show. He had initially took a leap of faith at just 24 years old, leaving with only $5,000 to his name, and ultimately to chase his dream of becoming a winemaker in California. He's entirely self-taught. He defied the odds and founded Modus Operandi Cellars at 26 years old, crafting wines that have earned critical acclaim, including a spot at the White House State Dinner. And now, after 20 years of winemaking, Jason is setting his sights on a new frontier. We go through this briefly in the episode, but we're going to have him on for a part two because he's building an AI agency focused on workflow automation through agent development and deployment, helping small businesses and corporate clients optimize efficiency, scale their operations, and increase profitability. In addition to that, he is in the midst of evaluating and launching a marketplace for winemakers. But with that said, let's dive into the episode. You're going to want to take notes. You're going to want to re-listen to this, and you're going to want to hear. So let's strap up and head into the episode. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I'm making it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That mean you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back. Well, Jason, I know your marketing's working, and the reason why I say that is when you first got on my radar, it was an email campaign talking about your wine, not as a direct, click this and buy, but more so sharing your story, which was intriguing, and then reached out to you directly. And fast forward a couple months, and here you are on our podcast. So I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Of course. So I don't want to spill the beans, but your story in and of itself is what attracted me to want to reach out and have you on the podcast and what the email had discussed. So I guess bring us back in time. You one of the things that you're involved in now is you own a winery and you have for a number of years. But walk us through how you got started. How old were you? What were you doing before? Like, bring us back to the beginning.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it was this having this business for the last, 21 years has been an absolute dream come true for me. I'm a kid from Texas, born and raised in Dallas and essentially didn't grow up with wine on my dinner table. My parents didn't drink it, so I didn't know much or anything about it until I'd say late teenage years when I started working in fine dining restaurants. So that interaction there, with the fine dining, the sommeliers, the directors of wine, all that stuff, they saw that I was interested in it. It really kind of took me under the wing, pulled back the curtain, and just kind of showed me, and let me taste some of the most insane wines on planet Earth. So I was drinking like first growth Bordeaux's, grower champagnes, Napa Cult Cabs. I mean, just the best of the best. So pretty fortunate for me that access kind of helped that interest in wine really evolve into a passion for it. My palate became better and better. And fast forward a little bit, I'd say in early 20s or so, I got my real estate license, did that for a year and a half, 2 years. And then I'd say basically one morning, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, Angelica, she was like, "Listen, man, I know you think that real estate's your thing, but it's pretty obvious that it's not because you're pretty bad at that. So we need to like figure out what
Got
you're
to
actually
appreciate
like."
an honest one.
Yeah, she's half Brazilian, half Italian, and
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
double Latin. So very very blunt sometimes. Anyway, so yeah, she's like, "You need to figure out what you're passionate about and see if there's a career with that we can kind of pursue for you." And kicked around some ideas, and She's like, well, how about wine? You've always loved wine. And that was literally like the epiphany moment, light bulb went off. And I was like, holy shit, I want to be a winemaker. So, of course, that's a pretty lofty aspiration for a kid from Texas with no roots in the industry, no family out here in California to help, and no money to do it with. We were super blue collar. Like my father was a carpenter his entire career. So just regular folk, right? So, anyway, I'd say about 6 months later, we had a 3 week long garage sale, sold everything that we owned, which wasn't much. And with about $5,000 in our bank account, she and I eloped and moved to California to pursue the dream of me starting a winery and having a, wine company and brand. So pretty crazy. And there's a lot more to it. I'm not sure how deep you want me to go in terms of like, actually achieving that, but that's where it all kind of started for sure.
That's cool. I've always heard and have experienced myself now, having been married for, only, a year and a half, but, you find a good woman and partner in crime, and they, have those honest conversations with you and really help you get to the next level. And I've experienced that over the last year and a half. So cool to see that
Yeah.
was
Well,
a
and
pretty
more than
important
that,
inflection
right?
point.
Yeah, more than that, I think, the fact that she obviously believed in you and just said, "Hey, I'm willing to uproot our lives and let's go do this and make it happen." That's pretty badass.
Yeah. We were pretty young. We didn't really, we obviously didn't have any kids at the time, nothing really holding us there. So it was the time to do it, and when we got out here, it was, it definitely wasn't easy because, like I said, we only came out here with like $5,000. So that's kind of an embarrassing number if you really think about it. Uprooting your whole life, going away from your family, all the support you got there, and moving to a place where you know absolutely nobody, and then of course, I mean, think about it too. The goal was getting into the wine industry in Napa Valley. It's like that's the most expensive place on planet Earth to try to do this, right? It's where most people who come to Napa to start a winery are coming with something different. They probably already had a pretty successful career, if not very successful career, and they're like, this is cool. I sold my company. I think I'll retire to the wine industry in Napa and have a vanity brand and do that and have a really nice write-off because you're going to lose a shit ton of money along the way, which 100%. There's a um, there's a very common saying in Napa, like how do you make a small fortune in wine? Start out with a big fortune in wine, and that's usually how you make a small fortune. So it's a joke, but it's legit, like the truth. I mean, it's a place where you come to probably lose money. I mean, one great example is there's a vineyard called Paul Maz. It's if you ever go there to visit, you'll see. I mean, it's the most grandiose, amazing place. They built their winery into basically it's all dug out as a cave in the side of a mountain, but they dug out the mountain essentially. It's 18 stories from the top floor to the basement. This is all dug out of a mountain, right? The entire winery is inside there. Um, the cellar, the cave system for aging. I mean, it's insane. So the guy who owns it, he's the guy that invented the heart stent, and his wife has like 15,000 acres or something like that in Argentina, cattle and all that. So just like more money than you know what to do with. So like, what do? You start a winery and you
Build a
lose a
mountain.
bunch and yeah, you basically have a place where you can get that great tax write-off, but you also get something out of it. You get a pretty sweet like vanity brand and um, maybe someday you make some money, but in that case, I don't know. That's like 100-year plan if you ask me.
Well, I
But yeah,
haven't heard that
yeah,
wine reference before that you made, but I have heard if you want to become a millionaire, start off as a billionaire and run
yeah.
an airline, and then you'll
Oh,
become a millionaire.
yeah. Um,
So tell us a
yeah.
little bit
So
about like I want to know the nitty gritty on you
yeah.
get to California with $5,000 in your pocket.
Yeah, what do you do
You obviously
first?
didn't. Yeah, what? Yeah, what'd you do?
Yeah, so I moved to Davis to go to UC Davis. That was the plan, like, because it's like the best winemaking school in the country. And we'd actually lived there for like 4 years. But after about, let's say, 3 or 4 months of me living there and talking with students who are already in the program, I pretty quickly realized like, I don't think I'm going to go to Davis. I could tell it was just a bit too theory based for me and my learning style. I'm a very
Country boy from
hands-on learner.
Texas.
Yeah, well, again, my dad was a carpenter, so he's a tradesman. I know that I learned better, doing stuff with my hands versus, what I probably had in store at Davis, which was very theory based. Because again, I could tell just from those conversations, they weren't really making a whole lot of wine. And for me, like I need to get my hands dirty. I need to get in there and do it. So like drawing molecules, wearing a lab coat, doing research projects, that would have been a waste of my time. So I did it basically. I realized, look, before these schools ever existed, people learn how to make wine through that apprentice mentor relationship. So I said, well, shoot, I've got an email address, a cell phone, decent personality. There's like no reason why I couldn't have 20 or more mentors. So I just started doing my own research. I read every winemaking book, every trade publication, watched every YouTube video. So my theory was strong. I knew like theoretically how to do it. I just never technically made wine. So yeah, I kept doing for work because I had to, of course, make money. I kept working in fine dining. So I was working at a place, here in Napa, Michelin star rated restaurant, really high level food and wine pairing program. And me and the guys I was working with there, they knew my goal. They knew that my goal is to become a winemaker and all that. We would go out wine tasting just for fun, right? So we went to this one particular tasting, and my buddy was like, "Hey, man, that old guy over there, I just overheard him say it. He has a little vineyard in his backyard. You should go to him and ask him if you can get some fruit from him that he maybe doesn't want, like second crop or young vines, stuff that doesn't really have any value. See if you can make wine from that just to get some practice." And he said, all the guy can do is say no, right? That's the worst that can happen. So I was like, yeah, man, I guess you're right. So I gathered my courage, went and asked him. So listen, sir, I understand you have a vineyard. I'm studying to be a winemaker. Do you think I can come to your property? I'll be happy to hand pick any fruit you don't want. I'll pick it myself, take it to my apartment in Davis, and ferment it in my closet. I was like, I don't care how good or bad the fruit is. I just need to go through the process of making wine so I can learn. And the old guy was kind of like, yeah, he's like, I'll be damned, kid. 'Cause I was 24 years old at the time. He goes, I don't know what that is. I don't know what second crop is. I don't know what you mean by young vines. I bought this property as an investment property for the house. It's going to be a rental income property. I'm not living there. He goes, I don't know what to do with any of that fruit. It's probably going to rot on the vine if someone doesn't do something with it. So I'll tell you what, you can have all the fruit. You don't have to do it in your closet. I have a 3-car garage here on the property. I'll buy you everything you need to make the wine, and we'll just split it 50-50 when we bottle it. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, actually, I thought he was full of shit at first. Because, I mean, that's just like, what are the odds of that happening? But it was legit. Actually, he hooked it up, man. I made wine in his garage for 2 harvests, and that garage became my classroom. And it was perfect for me because, there was no one over my shoulder telling me like what to do and when. I had to kind of basically put those, connect those theory dots I given myself through my self-study, apply that to the wine I was making. And like whenever I had questions about what I was doing, theories I needed to test, or problems with the fermentation I needed to fix, I would email all these different mentors that I'd made friends with. And the craziest thing was like, knowing that the exact same question was going out to all these different people, and then seeing the answers come back and realizing that like no two answers were the same. I I kind of realized like, wow, man, if you asked 100 different winemakers, like, how do you make wine? I realized you could easily get 200 different answers because there's like more than one right way to do this. And I kind of came to the conclusion like winemaking is an art form that's supported by science. It's not like 2 + 2 = 4, and that's the only answer. There's more than one right answer. It comes down to style. And that's actually, came up with the name modus operandi cellars, because it's Latin for method of operation or the way in which one does something. So I was kind of taking the knowledge from all these different people and like cherry picking the best bits of knowledge and creating my own method of operation of how to make my wines going forward. So 2004, found a couple of people to help me out with the money part. And then these are just normal people too. They're not deep pocketed guys. They just had some disposable income. Thought it'd be cool to be a partner in a winery in Napa, and it gave me a couple of bucks, right? And so in 2004, we started the winery officially and commercially. So I bought real fruit from real vineyards. So we got out of the backyard, made the wine in a real winery. So we got out of the garage. And in 2004, I made 8 barrels of Cabernet, from a couple of different vineyards. So that ends up being like 200 cases of wine, super small production. And, kind of been for the last 21 years, slowly and quietly growing the brand. We're still super boutique. I mean, most people don't even know we exist. I'd say most of our marketing has been word of mouth for all this time. I mean, people who would, it was crazy. Like when I was working at that restaurant, it's a good 4 hour experience, 3.5, 4 hours. So you're spending some time with people, and a lot of them would end up saying like, "Hey, so what are you into? What do you do? What do you like?" Like, well, it's funny you ask. I'm actually starting a winery here in Napa. I liken it to, what do aspiring actors do when they want to be actors? They move to Hollywood. They don't usually have work at first. So what do? They wait tables, hopefully waiting on like an important person in the
Producer or
industry that
somebody.
can. Exactly. So like for me, I was whispering in people's ears, not really, but I mean I did whisper in a few ears, but they like, I'd tell them that and they'd say, "Oh, that's cool, man. Well, here's my card. Put me on your mailing list. And when you're ready to sell some wine." So that's how I kind of started the list, started the, you know, building my,
Distribution cycle.
yeah, a little bit. We've never really been in distribution, in the classical sense of that, phrase or word in the wine industry, because we sell most of our wines direct to consumer. It's just been our model since the beginning. It's the best model in terms of like money, because you get the money
Yeah.
versus in distribution, you have to sell it to a distributor who basically buys it at half the retail price, and then they go sell it. But problem with them is they don't go sell it. You still have to fly your happy ass to wherever they are, pay the money for all that, all the travel, take them out to dinners and stuff, entertain them, to help them sell the wine so they can make commissions on the stuff that they should be selling anyway. It is what it is. That's just part of the biz, but direct to consumer is just way better. And it's weird. It's like starting the company when I did. When you make wine, it's such a weird sales cycle, because it's not like, oh, I made a widget today, I can sell it tomorrow. Well, no, you ferment some grapes today, you can't sell a bottle tomorrow. You ferment some grapes today, it's going to be in barrel for a couple of years, and then you finally bottle it, and maybe you give it 6 months to a year bottle age before you release it. So the sales cycle is super long, and it's a lot of people don't get it, but I mean, imagine that 2004 first vintage. I didn't sell my first bottle of wine until 2000, middle of 2006, maybe early 2007, right? But in that time between 2004 and 2007, I had also put money in for 2005 and 2006 and probably 2007. So you're shelling out for, the upfront, expense for 3 to 4 years before you can sell your first bottle of wines. It's a super hard, and high cash intensive business. And then guess what? Like, so now we're talking like mid 2007. What happened in 2008? Freaking economy took a dump, right? But here's the thing, like I didn't know any better. I didn't have good years and then feel that. I basically was born into that kind of, environment. So I was like, okay, I guess this is the way it is, and didn't feel so bad, so maybe that was a good thing or whatever. But it's weird because like here we are again. The wine industry is in deep doo doo. There's a snowball effect of different factors happening in the industry right now. And it's all happening at the same time. So we have a generational shift. We've got the economy, and then you've got the financial situation, the financial difference between who have been the greatest wine buying generation of all time, which is the baby boomers, right? They experienced a completely different, you know, wealth building experience than the younger generation are experiencing right now. If you think about it, like when the boomers were younger, like their income here, home prices here, okay, very close together. Now it's like younger generation income here, home prices up here, and they're trying to span that gap. So it's harder, inflation, all these other things, just like money doesn't go as far and all that stuff. So, and then you got, the WHO and the, uh, uh, what's the department here in the States for health? Oh, drawing a blank on it.
CDC.
CDC.
Not CDC. It's like anyway, telling people like any amount of alcohol consumption is unhealthy for you. It's just like, is it though? I think everything in moderation is pretty okay. So, the younger generation are listening to that stuff and they're choosing abstinence. So you got the boomers who are saying, hey, I'm looking at my cellar and I'm realizing I've got more wine than I can ever drink in my life. Why do I need to buy more wine? So they don't buy as much, if at all, right? Um, so that is happening. It's just a weird time. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is the sales and demand for wine over the last I'd say 2.5, 3 years has just like really been on a pretty steep decline. Of course, we rely on visitation out here in Napa Valley, and when these hotels aren't doing us any favors by charging on average $500 to $700 a night for a room, it's like it just makes it harder for average people to like get out here and come visit us. You have to be like a C-level executive to make it to make it work. Like literally did a cost comparative analysis for like let's say a couple coming from Dallas, middle of America, over to California. By the time you do flights for two, drivers, all your tasting fees, 3 wineries a day, hotel, food, meals, all that stuff. I mean, you're probably like $5,000 to $7,000 pretty easily before you buy your first bottle of wine. So the average Joe is just going to have a hard time, you know, doing that. Of course, when you come out here, we want you to actually buy wine, not just pay tasting fees. That does nothing for us. So, um, it's gotten harder. Um, and dealing with that, people have to make, these wineries have to open their eyes and see you ignored the younger generation because you were so high on your, sniffing your own asses when it comes to the boomers, right? Oh no, it's all good. No, our sales are great. Sales are great. And the luminaries were trying to tell us for years and years, you gotta focus on the younger generation because these boomers aren't going to be buying forever. And they're not. They were right. I'm guilty of this myself. So a lot of marketing changes have to happen, and um, you know, likely going to start a company. I'm in the works of it, kind of proving the concept and speaking with some tech people about creating a solution for that. So anyway, that's for another time.
So I
But
want to
I've been,
go
yeah.
I want to go into how you've pivoted based on what you just said, or how you plan to pivot, which you just kind of alluded to. But before we go in that direction, I want to go back because probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes ago, you said a lot of really good things that I just want to
Mm,
acknowledge. Some, I would say, foundational success principles. So one
mm,
is you up and left and followed your dream. A Tony Robbins ism of burning the boats, so to speak. You up and left and had no idea what you were doing. You just knew generally where you were going. And that would be point number one, is just the idea of burning the boats. Point number two, you had, frankly, the balls and the courage to just reach out to people who have had success in the industry that you are entering and asked if they could mentor you, answer some questions. I would imagine you also were respectful of their time and like went to those meetings or calls prepared on your end. And then three, excuse me, number three, when you're uh, out there, you're with people, you're working at a restaurant, you're sharing your dream, you're sharing your vision, and probably at that point you had no business doing so because you had nothing to show for it yet, but you still talked about it, and it
yeah.
was infectious enough to where someone that you work with said, "Hey, you should talk with this guy." And at the risk of him saying no, he ended up not just giving you the leftovers, but giving you everything and
Yeah.
helping get this thing off the ground. And you called it a coincidence, but I think it's, you know, God, the universe, whatever,
Man.
someone believes in, rewarding
Yeah.
you for the hard work and the sacrifice that you made to go in that direction. And just imagine if you didn't ask that question. Like
Yeah.
you probably still would have figured it out in a different way, but like I don't know, based on what you shared, I believe that you were supposed to ask that guy specifically, and he was supposed to help and partner with you. Like there's a lot of good stuff in those four key points that you did over that time period.
It definitely fast tracked you to where you are today, I'd imagine.
Yeah. And to your point, David, I mean, you know, I don't, I agree with you. I don't attribute it to a coincidence at all. I believe that I'm a very blessed person, and God has put me in certain environments and put me in front of certain people. And again, it takes the guts to actually, like, ask that question or put yourself out there. But 100%, man, like, me meeting that guy, that was God. 100%. That was God. I mean, man, I can tell you so many stories of, you know, those kinds of situations. And again, it wasn't easy. I remember, like, there's this one story where we had gotten to California, and $5,000 doesn't last too long here. Um, uh, I literally, we were, my resume in Dallas, let's say, was great. I could work pretty much wherever I wanted to. And I had a great resume for like service and all that in restaurants. So did well coming out here. Like nobody knew who no one knew what those restaurants were. So I had no like spice, man. No one cared. And it took me a while to find work, but that money ran out pretty quick. And it got to the point where, I'm the kind of guy, like, I want to wear the stress of finances on these shoulders, and I protect my woman from that. And so, I didn't I had to basically lie to my newlywed wife, and tell her, hey, okay, honey, I'm going to work. I'll see you later. So I get dressed up like a waiter and walk out the door, knowing full well that I didn't have a job. I would go to the library or to the local coffee shop, look through like lifestyle magazines, find local steakhouses and just anything, fine dining that I could send my resume to and try to get work. And, 4 hours or so later, I would come back and just be like, oh, I'm so sorry, honey. Like, I was first in, it was dead. I got cut. I didn't make any money. And so it's just like, it became crushing to me. And it's very hard. And so, like, it got to a point where, I mean, I just couldn't take it anymore. Ended up basically in the fetal position in my closet. My wife comes home and sees me crying on the closet floor because I was like, I'm so sorry. I've been lying to you. I don't have a job. We don't have any money. And I'm thinking to myself, man, did we make the right choice? Did I really screw up and put us in danger and whatever? And then, of course, shortly after that, I got blessed again, found a cool job, and in a really nice restaurant out here. And you know, I feel like he always pushes you to a place where you got to come back to him and kind of like just give it over and let him take it. This
Test
right
your
here,
faith.
kind of cool too. Yeah, man. Like, this is a white when my one of my wives was poured at the White House. How does that happen? Like, it's not that I had connections or anything like that. I didn't reach out to the White House. It was a buddy of mine who I worked with at that restaurant. We worked together for a couple of years, and like I say, like in 2005, I think it was. I was living in Davis, working in Napa, so it's an hour drive. I was also working as an intern at Viadera up on Howell Mountain, working in a Michelin star restaurant and making my wine. So I'd already started the brand. Um, Long story short, the point is, if I was to do all those things and then drive home to Davis, an hour away, I'd get 2.5 hours of sleep a night. And that's just like not sustainable. You can't do that. I would have fallen asleep at the wheel in the middle of the night. crashed and burned and died or whatever. So instead of driving home every night, a buddy of mine I worked with at this restaurant, he had an apartment in Napa, so I would literally sleep on a cot in a sleeping bag in the corner of his kitchen, so I could get 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night. And I remember like it'd be like a Saturday night, and um, I'd be trying to sleep, and he'd have friends over, and I'd hear his friends be like, "Hey man, I just noticed there's a guy sleeping in your kitchen. Is he homeless or something?" Like, he's like, "No, no, no, he's not homeless. He's a winemaker. You know, he's just tired, so just don't bother him, leave him alone." So when I left the winery, I'm sorry, when I left the restaurant to go manage the facility I was making my wines in, the same guy, like he left the restaurant to go work for Marcus Samuelson, that celebrity chef up in Chicago. And so like I got a phone call one day. It was my buddy Lucas. He said, "Hey man, you might get a phone call soon. It just might change your life a little bit." I was like, "Oh, cool. What is it?" He's like, "I can't tell you." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, dude, you can't say that and then like leave me hanging, dude." Like, he goes, "Well, legally, I can't tell you." And I was like, "Oh shit, am I in trouble? Like, should I get a plane ticket out of here or
Yeah.
something like
Might
that?" I'm
change
like,
my life in a bad way or
yeah, yeah. So he's like, "No, no, no, it's a good thing. You'll see." Whatever. So I got the phone call, and he's like, "Hey, this is Daniel Shanks from the executive residences of the White House. We're having a historical state dinner. We'd love to serve your wines. Is that okay?" And I kind of put two and two together, like, because the guy told me, he goes, "You can market this however you want after it's happened." Because he goes, "Obviously, we don't want the whole world knowing that the president of the United States is going to be drinking your consumable beverage, right?" So I was like, "All right, cool. Can I at least tell my parents, Because here's the deal. When I left Texas to go and be a winemaker in Napa, they laughed at me. My parents laughed at me. My friends laughed at me. No one believed that I was going to be able to do it because I wasn't the kind of guy that could, that they would see pulling that off. I was a little bit of a wild child, and yeah, it's just it did. I don't blame him for thinking that way. I just well, whatever. So it was nice. The guy was like, "Okay, I guess you can tell your parents. Just tell them not to tell anybody if that's even possible." And I was like, "Cool." So I called back home, told mom and my dad. I was like, "Yeah, guess what? Guess what? Remember how this wasn't supposed to be? You'd see me in 6 months and I'd be back, kind of thing." Like, well, guess what? I just got a call from my wine's gonna be poured at the freaking White House. So there you go. And so, of course, my dad, they're proud and all that stuff. And I think my dad just wished it was, a different president, but whatever. Um,
It's
anyway,
funny when you're on the outside, you can make those comments, but when you're a part of it, it almost doesn't matter who it is. You're like, I'm in the White House, regardless. That's funny. I
yeah,
I wanna
exactly.
I wanna I'm just more curious than anything. So you're in the closet, you're in a vulnerable state. You come clean to your wife that you don't have a job, and that you've been lying in the meantime. Um, I would imagine there is a mixture of her being pissed and also comforting, trying to comfort you. Like, which one was it? Was it both? Because I'm just trying to think if that was my wife, it would probably be a cocktail of those two reactions.
Mm. I mean, I think it was just more like we were both scared. I don't think she was mad at me. She was just scared because we didn't know what we were gonna do. I mean, we didn't have we had nothing, no resources, and it's not like I could call home and be like, hey, mom, hey, dad, send me 10 grand or send me 5 grand or send me anything. Like we're very blue collar. Uh, yeah, I mean, I was a latchkey kid. We were so poor that like, I was when I would walk home from school when I was a little boy, we lived in an apartment, and it was so bad that like when I got home, I'd be there by myself because I didn't have any really siblings that lived with me. And so let's say it's the middle of winter, freezing cold, and I couldn't turn the heater on, right? I wasn't allowed to. So the only thing I could do, I'd go into my parents' closet because it was the smallest big room in the house, which is very small. And then inside there, I could turn on the space heater, right, and heat that small space and watch my little black and white rabbit ear TV. until my parents got home, and then we could turn on, the heater when people were there. So it was like I was accustomed to hard times or whatever. Um, so I mean, it's whatever. We all have history and stories and stuff. I'm thankful for this, honestly, because it puts things in perspective for me. I live in a beautiful place, drive really nice cars. We have a house in Napa Valley. We travel like nobody's business. We travel a lot. This will be our almost third year in a row going to Europe just because we want to. Um, like my daughter, she's 17. She's seen more countries and more awesome cities, and it took me 40 years to see. And I'm super proud of that, but also worry about, she's not experiencing the same hardships that I had. So I'm like, dang it, am I spoiling her a little bit? But
I struggle with that as well.
yeah,
Like it's tough. Like, yeah, because
yeah,
there's a lot of that in your background that gave you the drive and the instinct to do what you've done and build what you've built. And so yeah, I from time to time maybe I've told I'm a little hard on my daughter, and but it's like, yeah, I expect a lot from her just because I know what she's capable of. But yeah, I don't
yeah,
I don't want to give her anything, right? Because it's not what I've built. I want her to go build what I've built and 10x it, and do whatever
right.
the hell she wants with this world. So I get your sentiment there, and David will be joining that soon behind us here.
Hey,
So they've got
Yeah, we
number
got
one
two
coming
two
here.
current girl dads
Yeah.
on the podcast, and I'll be a girl dad here at some
hey,
point in September. So I'll join
nice.
the club.
Congrats, man. It's a good
Thanks.
club to be in.
It
We
is.
my wife and I have been talking about that same thing, like um similar-ish background with Landon and I. Not exactly the same, of course, but we didn't have anywhere close to a silver spoon, so to speak. And a lot of my drive, I don't know about Landon in this sense, but a lot of my drive was I was so fearful of being poor that like that was my drive to create momentum and be on the track of success. And as a result, you have kids, and you're like, well, shit, what's their inspiration gonna be? Because they don't have to see their dad's truck get repoed at 3 in the morning and not know what's going on when you're 7 years old. Um, so stuff like that. It's like, okay, how do we recreate without them experiencing what we had to experience, but recreate that fire in their belly? And I don't know the answer, more rhetorical than anything, but I
A lot of
I'm
truth
thinking
to it.
about that.
There's a lot of
You know,
truth to it for sure.
I tell her, kind of like you, Landon. I don't, I let her know like you're blessed. You have a pretty awesome life. To grow up here, I mean, it's very safe. I mean, shit, I hardly lock my doors. Um, but I'm like, look, if I'm hard on you, it's not because I'm trying to be a jerk to you or anything like that. It's because it is my job to prepare you for what you're about to experience when I'm not there to take care of you, when I'm not there to like hold your hand and this and that. Like, um, you know, when we travel, I'm like, I'll try to make her think about, hey, where's our gate? And what time do we need to
Mm.
leave for the airport and this and that? Well, Dad, why don't you? I'm like, no, because I'm not always going to be here to do this stuff. And if I don't prepare you for this, then I've not done my job, and I don't want you to fail and then, you know, get into a situation that is not even good for you, in terms of like safety and whatever.
I'm
So
smiling.
that's
I'm smiling because I'm glad you used the example of the airport, um, because I've noticed, and Landon, you'll get a kick out of this because you know her, but my wife Kennedy, um, it's almost like she can't travel by herself anymore because I've just taken care of everything, right? The arrival
yeah,
time, the booking of the tickets. Like we're going on a trip to Aruba in a couple weeks, and it's a baby moon slash. We're bringing her mom and stepdad, and her and her mom were talking, and her mom was like, "Well, can we just let's just book the tickets now?" And I happened to be traveling for work, and she's like, "No, like, let's wait till David gets back." And she's like, "Why? We're just gonna book the tickets." And she's like, I don't know. He just always does that."
But
And
that's
mom's
what I
like,
struggle
"What?"
with. That's
Yeah.
that's what I struggle with because like a lot of times it's like with my daughter, I'm like, I could just hit the easy button and either throw money at it or tell her how to do it, right? But it's like you said, Jason, you've got to live this shit to learn this shit. And
Yeah.
if you don't, and you get outside of these four walls eventually, the world's a different place. And I'm not going to be there to hold your hand through it. So yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
you gotta prepare them for all of it.
Yeah. It's an unforgiving place, you know. So yeah, 100%.
You would so earlier you had mentioned, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but you got up to, I think in that first year, 8 barrels and 200 cases, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. Just so we have a frame of reference, quick question. What are you at now in terms of barrels and cases produced, just so we have a frame of reference on
Yeah.
growth?
Yeah. Hold on a second. Let's see. Let's see.
Do a little math here.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say about like right around 100 barrels. And so that's like right around 2,500 cases or so. I've been as high as 4 to 5,000. Yeah. Yeah. Closer to 5,000 cases. But that's when I was really in like, okay, let's take this national, make it more of like a bigger brand. The goal was like 25,000 to 30,000 cases. Because I mean, if you're going to get bought, or acquired or whatever, you're not interesting to anybody unless you're around that 25,000 to 30,000 case range. That's like where it starts to become, now you're on people's radars. So I just started that uh, down that pathway at the wrong time. And what I mean by that is, when COVID was great for wine. Honestly, I mean, I had 2 record years in a row during COVID because I think we were all doing the same thing, and there wasn't shit to do. So you sat around. I was
Hmm.
I was probably drinking 2.5 bottles of wine a day, and I'm not kidding when I say that. I was literally was consuming about 2 or 3 on a good day bottles of wine, and so as COVID kind of calmed down and went away, uh, the wineries were looking at it like, holy crap, look at this demand. Let's make more wine. And I was like, man, this is a great time to grow. Let's like initiate that, growth initiative for our other brand called Vicarious. It's more of like our entry level brand. Um, and so I started doing that, and we, invested a bunch of money in creating more inventory. But the problem was that we were on this path, but the consumer coming out of COVID was like, man, I drink a lot of wine. I sure did get unhealthy. So let's do this. So as we were doing this, the consumer was doing this. And this in between, that's inventory, right? So the wine industry, just in general, went kind of buck wild and just started making a boatload of wine, you know, off of the idea, which essentially was a false sense of demand. And so we're all in the same boat. And this is another one of those, snowball things I was talking about earlier. Um, the distributors, let's say, the people that I would need to facilitate that kind of growth, um, just bad time, right? Because, like, for instance, a year before all this, for every $1 in sales, they had $1.1 worth of inventory. Now, for every $1 in sales, they have 1.6 to $1.7 of inventory. So it's a massive increase for them. Their warehouse is just full of wine, and it's just no one's going to be taking on new projects and opening up new markets with new brands when that's the case. They have to sell through what they have, and there's like a boatload of like consolidation in the wholesale distribution market. The big guys like Constellation Brands and sorry, like RNDC and Republic Glacier, like they're buying up the smaller distributors, right? So there's just there's no, you need a good mix of the big guys to service the really big wineries with like millions of cases. You need the smaller guys to focus on the boutique guys like myself, small to mid-size. And with these consolidations happening, it's just another thing that, you know, they weren't investing in us. They weren't servicing people in my position, so it was just a bad time for me to start growing. And so I was like, look, you got to listen to the market. Pulled back from that, sold through that inventory, and now I'm more so I don't really have big ideas for like making this winery super big anymore like I used to. Now I like what we're doing. We have a great base of loyal customers. Our wine club is by far like our greatest outlet for wine sales. Say like 80% of our wines goes to the wine club, and I want to get to where it's essentially like 95 or more percent go through the club. I want to create like a club or allocation only brand where I'm not always out there trying to like scramble looking for new customers and stuff like that. I feel like when I get to that point, which is not going to take too long, it's almost like I am the winemaker for my club members, because I know where the wine's going while I'm making it. It's not that I'm like making wine and hoping I can sell it. I know who I'm making my wine for. So I am their winemaker, and it becomes more of an interesting relationship. And that's definitely been like one of the things in my, that kind of I feel like sets me apart a little bit. Like my my company has been around because of referrals, People come out to Napa, they do the tasting, or they meet me wherever. If I'm in a in-home tasting in freaking Florida or wherever, you know, people bring their friends in who are like mine, they love wine, they have the, they're willing and able to support the brand or whatever. We have a wine dinner in their house or something like that. And those people kind of see, you know, this isn't some starchy, pretentious Napa brand. And that because Napa does have a bad reputation in that regard. No, there's a lot of brands like mine that are super like humble, down to earth. We just love what we do. It's not a vanity brand. Like I love making wine. I love the connections with my friends now. A lot of my customers become friends. Um, and so whenever a person hears like, "Oh, you're going to Napa? Oh man, you got to go hang out with Jason. You got to go see Jason's thing." It's great. We're like number one on TripAdvisor for like 3 years, I think. I think we're like number two or number three right now. We were number one for a long time because like, again, our experience is so laid back and just we don't just sit there and talk about, oh, this is what this wine tastes like. This is what that one. No, dude, I don't ever say that stuff. I don't ever tell you. I hardly even talk about the wines, to be honest. It's more telling stories and, um, pulling back the curtain on winemaking stuff, because as a winemaker, I can get into that. Like I can tell you the reason why you're tasting that, or the reason why this wine is expressive like this is because, there's a technique in winemaking. Here's what it is, here's what it does, and that's that. And they're like, oh man, okay, you could see the light bulb coming on, and like people connecting the dots. Like, damn, now I understand. So like, I've had so many people tell me, I know more about wine now after this tasting with you than like a lot more than I did when I came into this. Like it just connected so many dots, from like a wine making standpoint, like why wines taste the way they do, or why they don't taste the way they expect it. We have my freaking cell phone is on the back of every bottle of wine I make. And a lot of people are like, "That's your cell?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, call it. Try test it out. That's my cell. My phone will ring." And they're like, "Why do you do that?" I'm like, "Because I want people to realize that this isn't some big corporate winery. This is a very personal thing to me. You know, this is my life. I mean, I'm 47 and I've been making wine for it'll be 22 years this year. I mean, that's almost half of my life on earth. I mean, this is pretty much all I know, you know. Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things is getting a random text message from a client or a friend or a customer, or a club member, whatever, like a picture of them celebrating a birthday or an anniversary or the sale of their business or whatever with my wine. Like, and I'm just like, dude, for real, man, you chose
Probably
my wine
doesn't
to
get old.
celebrate?
Yeah,
No, man,
that's the pinnacle.
yeah, for sure. And that kind of is what keeps me, dedicated to like, man, like, you can't really let your guard down when it comes to winemaking, because, we get one chance a year to hit a home run. And it's not like beer brewing where it's like, oh man, I messed up that batch of beer. Oh well, I'll just go to the local beer brewing shop and buy some more hops and stuff and throw some more water in a pot and make another batch, tomorrow. No, you get one chance, you get one harvest. And the price of what I'm making, from a raw goods standpoint, it ain't like buying hops, man. Like it's not a commodity purchase. This is very expensive fruit. Facilities we make wines out of are expensive. The barrels we make wine and put them in are expensive. So you just can't let your guard down. But the point is like, I don't, you keep your guard high because you just don't want to let your clients down, You don't ever want them to be like, well, I like a lot of his wines, but not that one or whatever. And you're not going to be all things to all people. That's never going to happen. But, you know,
You
to
want to
have
be
people trust
predictable and
me.
dependable.
Yeah, I want people to trust that, like, you know what you're going to get when you buy these wines. It's made by a real person who loves what he's doing, and and it comes across in the wines for sure.
I
Yeah.
love
That's
that.
awesome.
Before before we start to wrap up, and I would invite you to do a part two at some point once it's fully launched. But I had made mention of like, let's talk about how you're gonna pivot given the things that you
Hmm.
shared, and you just shared one which is really pushing more on the club side of things. I imagine it's like a monthly subscription or something of the sorts. So certainly feel free to opine on that, but then also
Hmm.
just a quick overview of the vision of the new company that you're considering rolling out there, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Yeah, for the club, I mean, I am kind of known in the Valley here as one of the more, marketing slash tech focused winemakers. Like, um, I'm the only winery in America, I think, that basically, from for our club, we offer like think of it like a payment plan or afterpay or sizzle or sizzle, however you say it, like that. But you'll never see that in used in the wine industry because it's like it's wine, it's alcohol, so they won't touch it. So I essentially created my own version of it, um, through the winery or whatever. But we let people kind of, rather than having one lump sum payment for their club shipments, we split it up into 100, 200, or $300 monthly payments. And all that money basically goes onto a virtual gift card in their account. And when the club is actually processed, we let people make changes to whatever I say, because I'll create like a default order. And then they have a chance to make changes and get exactly what they want, nothing more, nothing less. And then when it charges, it just takes the money from that virtual gift card and pays for the order. So it's not one big lump, one hit. That's been great because, again, think about it like if you're a wine collector or consumer and you're in, like, let's say you're in 5 clubs. Well, if each club, let's say it's $500, that's, and they are all basic processing in the same month. That adds up, it's $2,500 in wine expenses or, you know, just to like have your club shipment go through. Well, that becomes like a pain point for certain people, right? Not everybody, but if someone sees like, God dang it, I spent $2,500 on wine this month, we should probably shave off a couple of these clubs, and save some money. Well, I don't want to be part of that pain, So for me, I'm under the radar and like $100, $200, 300
Mm,
on the 20th, so it's not on the last page of their
yeah.
statement, their bank statement,
Yep.
So I'm thinking about that stuff too. But yeah, so just under the radar, so anyway, we do that. And then the other business, I'm on the fence. There's a couple of names, but I'm thinking right now, Vino Hacker. I know that, like, the word hacker can be off-putting to the older generation, But the point is, I'm not marketing to the older generation because they're on their way out anyway. I'm marketing to the younger generation who's more comfortable with that term because they understand things like, like biohacking and stuff like that. You're basically cutting through the bullshit to get to the meat of the best, a lot quicker and more efficiently, right? Um, so essentially, this would be, I think the only way to think about it really is kind of like the Amazon of wine purchasing. We're so accustomed to, purchasing wine, or sorry, we're so accustomed to purchasing things online in that Amazon fashion where it's like 2 clicks to purchase, shipping included kind of thing. Um, and there's never really been anything built like that for wine. And I have figured out how to do it. I've been talking with people, in satellite, I should say peripheral businesses that I would need to make it happen. And they've all confirmed, like, dude, hey, that's an amazing idea. This industry needs this so bad. And it's possible, based on how they would tie into it. They're like, yep, we could do that. And that works. So, um, yeah, man, it's just basically almost like a blockchain style network of wineries banding together to create one big marketplace, and with tons and tons of wine SKUs, or options that the consumer can shop from and purchase and try, versus ordering directly from each winery. The winery is still fulfilling the order. It's just coming through me in a way, and I won't bore you with like the behind the scenes technical details. It's just, it takes all the friction away from people who would otherwise abandon the sale or the order because shipping's too expensive, or this or that.
Well, and
Yeah, it's just
also
really
for
Awesome.
the wineries who maybe aren't as good at marketing, you'll in theory have
yeah,
an audience of people they can just plug into. Um,
exactly.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So the for me, getting wineries on board will be easy. It's the customer acquisition part that I'm more worried about. That would just take either a lot of marketing dollars to just get out in front of as many people as possible. But the plan is to basically say, if you're a winery that's joining up to this network, we don't want you to give us your email database or whatever. We just want you to highly encourage your network to join this, because there's it's a win-win for you and for the consumer. In this industry, think about, like, think about Instagram, right? Like, how Instagram models and stuff expand and blow up their following, aside from them being hot, and it's everyone wants to follow, hot chicks on Instagram.
Like collab.
Um, they collab, they tag each other, and they encourage people to follow their friend and vice versa. The wine industry's been like this. Oh, we don't share anything. Oh, I can't have my customers. I'm like, dude, we're in a tough spot right now. If we don't come together and get this network, this consumer base built up quickly, when it's your turn to do an offer, when it's your turn to do an offer, and you expect to sell a bunch of wine, don't be surprised if you don't, because you were like this and you didn't participate and help get the audience built up bigger and bigger, right? It's just going to take some collaboration and teamwork. We got to change our mindset and
Like you say, a new
work
way of
together.
thinking is more what it's going to take. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I love it.
That's it.
Well, one of the questions that we ask all of our guests, Jason, before we hop off, is a book that's had an impact on them. And the book that you chose is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Yeah,
Why'd you pick that?
man. So I've been a solopreneur, I guess you'd say, for all these years. I've literally ran this company essentially by myself, with no employees at all. I've got VAs and stuff like that, that help a little bit, but no salespeople, no sales and marketing, no nothing like that. No office manager. no copywriter for my emails and campaign, design and all that stuff. I do everything. So uh, here's the thing. I started reading that book, and within about 10 pages, I was like, holy shit, this guy's writing this book. He might as well have like been like, to
For
Jason
you.
Moore, you big dummy, you should have read this 10 years, 15 years ago. Because, I kind of realize buy back your time. If it teaches you this. First, figure out what your effective hourly rate is. It's easy to do. Once you know that number, if you can hire someone for one-fourth of that, your effective hourly rate, if you can hire them to do that job for you, then you're actually hurting the company if you don't, because you're probably not as good at that thing than they are. They probably actually like doing it, more than you do. And, you know, you basically set them free to do it, and that all that time that they're spending on doing that thing for a quarter of what it would cost you. You might be thinking like, "Oh, I'm going to save the company money by doing it myself and not putting out that money." You're not. You're still costing the company money because your time is spent on something that has low value, essentially low weight, or lower weight than what you should be putting your effort into, which is building the company, higher level stuff, business development, anything like that that gets the company moving forward. So, and then there's the 10-80-10 rule. You are the owner, right? You're the CEO. So you create, you still lead with the ideation. You come up with the idea, you articulate what the job is, you deliver the definition of done. What does this look like when it comes back to me and we can actually deploy this? You articulate all that in the 10% up front. The 80% that's done for you is 100% awesome, is one of the things Dan says. And then that 10% at the end is like you come back, you have a meeting, you go over like what they came up with, make little tweaks here and there, and then you deploy it. You engage whatever it was. And so all that 80% you got back, you could spend doing something else, business development, or like I said, that helps the company move forward versus just like, working.
Being in the grind.
Yeah, yeah. Nose to the grindstone, working in your business versus working on your business. I've said for the longest time, like I've and I told my partners this. I was like, look, should this company be further along than it is? Yeah, it should. Why hasn't it? Because I can only do so many things, so well. And I feel like I do everything in this company. Okay. Am I amazing at anything? Do I? Nope, because I'm spread so thin doing all this other stuff. So it's hard to be really, excellent at anything. Like our wines are great, but I'm like, God dang, I wonder how much better my wines would be if I could just be a winemaker for, 80% of the time and not have to put every other single hat on and do all that stuff, the rest of the time. So it was really eye-opening for me. Um, just letting go of my emails. It's one of Dan's big things. Let your executive assistant take care of all that. I set up a lot of AI, like automation agents and stuff to further automate my business the best that I can. I'm really into that. But yeah, I mean, life-changing book for me. I freaking love it, and I was so into it. I crushed it in like 2 days. I just pounded through that book and read it a couple of times since then. A lot of highlighting.
If you
So for everyone out there listening, get your hands on that book.
buy the book,
Hmm.
well, also and maybe you've already read it, Jason, but if you like that book, you'll also like Who Not How. That's a really good book along a similar vein of what you just shared. And the reason why I bring it up is anytime I want to learn about something, I find like 2 to 4 books, 2 to 4 podcasts on that
Hmm.
exact same topic, kind of coming full circle to what you mentioned around the mentors that you had. You can ask the same question and you get a bunch of different answers, and it's your job to craft all that stuff and put it together for what fits for you. So that's another book
Yeah,
that's in line with the one you mentioned.
yeah. The E-Myth Theory is another one.
Yep.
Great book.
Yep, great
Yep.
one.
There's a bunch, man. I love this stuff. You got the Puppet Master's Bible. It's more for like almost like a diabolical way of thinking about emotional sales, and pulling people's strings in ways that get them to do what you want them to do. I mean, not like in a diabolically evil or bad way, but just more psychological sales, Very cool book too.
Scoop that one up. Appreciate it. Well, Jason, this has been
Yeah.
a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this, and it's really cool to hear, particularly the very beginning stages. And I think that a lot of people will appreciate hearing that. Maybe they're in the midst of that situation that you went through, or something of that, and perhaps your story and the fact that you've made it through it will be inspiring to them. But before we officially hop off, uh, where can people buy your wine?
Yeah. Moduswines.com is the website. We're actually launching a new site probably later this week. But the website, people can call me up if they want. Feel free.
Buy a bottle, you'll get his number.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, Modus Wines, man. Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, appreciate it
Jason,
for
it's been
everyone
great.
tuning in. Yeah, for everyone tuning in today. Appreciate your time and attention, and let us know once I'll summarize it and say, wine marketplace site is up and running. We'll have you back on.
Right on. Yeah, look forward to it.
Awesome, dude. Take care.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces.